Well, following a bye week, welcome back to the State Sports Bar. As always, I am joined by Shane Williams-Rhodes, one of the Boise State greats, and we have had a little bit of time to decompress, I think. Boise State gets off to a 3-4 start. They go into the bye, following yet another home loss on the Blue, and now we hit the home stretch of the season, hoping everything is right and correct. Shane, talking with a lot of the guys this week, they said their approach to the bye was a little different this year than maybe in past years. They stayed in town. They got to work. I think Friday and Saturday, the guys had the opportunity to kind of get out and go do what they wanted. But for the most part, the practices during the bye were very intense, very competitive, very spirited. At least that's what they said. So when you played, like, how does that compare to a normal bye that Boise State might have? Is that different at all?
Yeah, typically you guys usually go home on that bye week, just for the weekend, go back, see high school teams that you played for play, things of that sort. But it's good to hear that these guys decided to kind of, strap it up and, try to right the ship. So that's a good thing to hear, especially on the bye week.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what they have to do at this point. Again, when we left Bronco Nation, the reoccurring theme was the fact that Boise State just wasn't able to get the job done against Air Force, and ultimately they're off to their worst start in about 20 years. We heard Andy Avalos say that they had to reestablish the foundation, or that's what they're efforting to do at this moment, what it truly means to be and play for the Boise State football team. And I'm just curious, Shane, when you hear things like that, like what kind of goes through your mind? I mean, I'll also bring up the fact that, after the Air Force game, we heard that there were players late for meetings. And I know that we dove into that topic extensively last week on the podcast. But what kind of goes through your mind when you hear Andy Avalos say things like reestablishing the foundation and what it takes to be prepared the way a Boise State football player knows he has to in order to compete on Saturdays?
It's getting back to the basics, even from game plans to doing the small things right, things like obviously not being late to meetings, those kind of things. So just trying to reiterate probably the stuff that he was going over at the beginning of fall camp, kind of now in the middle of the season. Obviously, that's not a good spot you want to be in when you're repeating the things that you learned on day 1 and day 2 of camp. But when the ship isn't right, this is what you have to do. You have to go back to the basics. We see it a lot. And all people are starting to kind of go on a downward slope. Just got to get back to the basics.
When you get a new head coach, there's obviously going to be a learning curve, like what this new coach expects of you, how he wants you to prepare, how you train, lift. I mean, there are so many things that go into this. To still be figuring this out a little bit of what the requirements are to prepare for a game as we hit the last week of October. I mean, you were here when the transition was made from Chris Peterson to Brian Harsin. How long did it take you guys to get on the same page as Brian and understand the expectations that he had for you and then go out and execute?
I think there's a huge difference with that situation because coming in season, Harsin had 3 years of head coaching experience. So he'd been where Andy is right now, figure out, exactly what it is that's wrong and, how to right shit. He had 3 seasons to figure it out. And so when he got to Boise State, obviously what he did at Arkansas State, he was successful in doing. So he was able to bring over his philosophy that he created when he first became a head coach after being under guys like Chris Peterson. I mean, he was at Texas. He was under all these guys and got to see a lot of different things. And then he got a chance to kind of put that in effect at a kind of a low competition and then move up to Boise State where he was able to piece together with those 3. Where Avalos is kind of, he's basically just got thrown in the fire as far as, knowing who and having to figure it out. This is his first year as a head coach. He's never been in the position where he was essentially in control of the game plan and control of, and basically approving everything, what happens week to week and all these things. So trying to uphold the culture while also trying to get that done. It's just a lot of things that goes into the head coaching job. And he's obviously this year. I think it's just growing pains. I think it's a foul. I think definitely next year, obviously having the year of experience, things will be better. He'll know how to handle different situations better and things of that sort. But I definitely think it's a different situation than what Harsin walked into.
Yeah. I think that the one thing that makes this place unique too, and you go back to when Chris Peterson was here, I was always fascinated by how he made you guys learn about every guy on the team essentially. And I believe like he even went to the extent of even quizzing you guys at times, right? Like you had to know, about the backup punter, is that and have a relationship with him, right? Is that correct, Shane?
Yeah, so Coach Pete was big into crossbreeding, is what he called it. So crossbreeding was when you have a guy who is in a different position and a guy who's from a different place. They have to essentially come together and learn about each other. So the way he used to kind of room was that you were next to someone who was in the same position as you. So if you had a receiver, the next person would be a lineman, the next person might be a linebacker, then you have a running back, then you have a kicker, then you have a quarterback. He wanted everybody to get to know everybody. He didn't want all the receivers in a corner, all the DBs in a corner, because at that point you're around the same guys at all times. You never kind of get to venture out. I think that was huge. So me personally, obviously, if I'm always with receivers, I'm just going to be with the receivers. I probably wouldn't have ventured out as much as I did, but being able to do that, obviously, I got closer to like guys on the opposite side of the ball, and when that was a for him, because when you do that, then obviously, okay, you develop that relationship, and when you're out and those kind of things, you're able to talk a little deeper into the ball and why the opposite side of the ball does what they do and that kind of things. I mean, whether on breaks. I know I took some breaks where I didn't go back home. I went back home with other teammates who, they weren't even in the same position. So those kind of things, just kind of opening your eyes up to things. And seeing that it's okay for people to be different, and you might have things in common, but on the outside, they might look different, but you never need to all be the same. And so he was huge into that. And I mean, we even played games during fall camp where he would make people stand up, and those two people would have to be able to tell him what the guy's first and last name was, where he was from, and what high school he went to. Just small things like that. And obviously, I know Avalos is probably trying to uphold those kind of things, but it's hard to duplicate what Pete used to do, man. It's just, he's a different kind of guy.
Shane, I have been racking my brain all week on this topic. I've been here long enough now. I've seen 3 head coaches. They all have their own way, own unique way of doing things. It's been basically more or less hinted that some things have kind of been slipping over time. And again, trying to figure out what in the heck that is and why that applies to Boise State being 3-4. And sometimes I think we focus on the big things like, okay, change the whole entire offensive playbook. I don't think that's the case here because, again, they continue to harp on the little things. And so talking with the guys this week, they more or less said that player to player accountability is something that has definitely been emphasized recently. And it's something that they are noticeably efforting to improve and get better. And it doesn't necessarily mean that like there's not any accountable players on the team. Like that couldn't be further from the truth. But again, going back to everything you said about the attention to the little details, I think stuff like that helped make Boise State truly special and extremely successful at times. You said that it made a big difference, so I'm going to take your word for it. And you hear things like this week, talking with Khalil Shakir, again, emphasizing that player accountability is definitely something they have been trying to work on. Ezekiel Noah, a senior linebacker on the team, says that now when they wake up in the morning, the linebackers have a group thread. They all text each other to make sure that they're up, ready to go, and mentally right for practice. Again, these are guys that practice early in the morning too. Many of them wake up at 5:30 in order to get mentally right for practice. Stephon Cobb says that now they are emphasizing what I've heard called Bronco Buddies or Bronco Brothers. I kind of like the latter labeling better than the former because it just sounds better to me. But either way, he says that they're kind of emphasizing that again, and that's where an older player on the team connects with a younger player on the team more or less puts his arm around his shoulder and tries to coach him through these teaching moments at the collegiate level. So I just think that these are the things that they are efforting to reestablish and rebuild and reinstitute into the program so that they can get back the winning ways that they once were able to achieve at such a high level. And so again, Shane, I don't know. I've been trying to rack my brain around it, man, with the information that we have been provided, and it's been hard to do. They keep saying it's the small stuff, not the big stuff, and the small stuff will eventually add up to big things. So trying to break this apart and go down to the ground level, I think these are some of the things that might matter as Boise State prepares for a stretch run that definitely is not going to be easy to face.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I want to touch on that part where you said about them, the leadership and them having the accountability and stuff going around the facility right now. Obviously, we know they have leaders and things of those sorts, but it was something that kind of was always a little weird to me when I was at Boise State, and I never really understood it, obviously, until I got older. But it's a difference in having a leader, having leaders and those kind of things, but having leaders is huge. And did find out being under Pete and Harsin was that your leaders don't have to be your starters. They don't have to be the best players on the field. They don't even have to be people who play. They just have to be people who are doing the right things, on and off the field and holding everybody accountable. And based off what we're hearing them do, it sounds like they don't have that. And so I know, me personally, when I was at Boise State, I want to say our Fiesta Bowl year, one of our leaders was Corey Bell. Corey Bell was obviously not a better DB than Dante Dion or, Darian Thompson and these guys that were, Tanner Vallejos. But Corey Bell was a guy who you knew was going to always do the right thing. He was going to hold somebody accountable. So if someone wasn't doing the right thing, he was going to call you out, whether it's in front of the team or it's in front of the coaches. He was going to say something. And so and obviously the coaches knew this, so that's why he was the captain. And, as me as a player, I'm thinking like, hey, that's weird. Like, why is he the captain? But, as the season goes on and you see those kind of things happening and, him speaking up and speaking out, it's huge. And it's obvious. Honestly, I think it's rare that you see it usually, because I know I've been on teams where we didn't really have, anyone who will speak up and say something. And then we guy who would speak up and say something, that guy, might be doing all the right things. And so it's kind of hard to listen to someone who is not, practicing what they preach. So I think that was huge. Came out because that's exactly where my mind goes, because it's hard to find some vocal leaders these days. A lot of the guys who usually are the guys, I know me, myself personally, when I'm on the field, at least, I'm not really a vocal person. I'm just kind of locked in and dialed in. And I know a lot of people are like that. And typically, you either have, I feel like at receiver, you either have a guy who's, kind of like that, or he's just really outspoken. So it can be on, it's only two sides of the spectrum with that one. But yeah, that's a huge deal. I'm glad they're doing that and something like that to kind of try to that and starting to kind of push, being more of a vocal leader and up and speaking out and those kind of things, because that can be really detrimental to a team. I mean, guys doing the wrong thing, people aren't speaking up because, they don't want to call them out and, hold people accountable. That person's just going to keep messing up because you're not telling them that they're doing anything wrong. So that's a huge, huge thing. And this team, is a little younger than past teams. So I could see that being a problem and not having guys like that to speak up.
Yeah. And again, I know that there might be people listening right now, like, how the heck does this really factor into them being 3-4? And like, I get that if that's your prerogative, but I do think these little things matter, because if you start and you build these relationships, and again, it sounds silly, but you enjoy the people you're around, then you're going to want to be around those people. You're going to want to fight for those people. You're going to want to learn from those people, all these things. Like one of the best examples, Shane, I could give is actually last year's Boise State men's basketball team. And I don't mean to necessarily take a shot at them or anything like that, but I kind of had a feeling that they weren't going to go down to Las Vegas and have an incredible run, or I mean, they did win an NIT game, so I definitely will tip my cap to them for that. But I just had a feeling that their season had an expiration date on it, because right when times were supposed to get tough, not even that. I don't know if that's the best way to say it. They're coming down the home stretch of the season, and they use some time off to take a break from things, right? And for me, while maybe that was necessary for that team, I would rather hear a story of, yeah, we had a week off, but these guys just love each other so much. We practiced through the week. They wanted to be around each other and get ready. You know what I mean? Like, so I that's why you hear these special, stories of teams making runs at the NCAA tournament and stuff like that. Usually their team chemistry is elite. They love being around each other. They love playing for each other, and they're able to go on and upset these teams that, instead unify, are more just talented. Boise established, under Harsin, would have monster seasons, and there were guys like Steph Cobbs that clearly was talented, but would barely ever get any touches, And so I feel like that team aspect is starting to, they're trying to form that again. They're trying to form the connections again. And unfortunately, those are things, scheme X's and O's, you might be able to draw something up on the whiteboard and figure it out overnight and go and utilize it on Saturday. But these are the things that take time, right? Like, you can't just become brothers overnight. Like, these are the things that take time. And so, again, trying to figure out what they're saying when they say reestablish the foundation, I think these are things that all go into that foundation.
Yep. And like I said, Rome wasn't built overnight. And so I think this is something that when the season's over, when they start, spring and winter type deals and sessions and trainings, I think that'll be the huge emphasis. Is they'll always remind these guys, who's going to step up, who's going to speak out. Like, that's going to be a focus all spring. And you'll get guys who buy in and guys who start doing it. And then in the summer, you'll have guys doing it. It'll become contagious. You have more guys starting to hop on. And by the time you get to fall camp, you'll have enough guys, speaking up and holding their teammates to a certain standard, where now in the season already having this intact. But I honestly don't think that's something that we need to focus on it. But it's not something that's just like that. It's not going to get activated and be fixed. It's going to happen over time. Yep. But it's a good step in the right direction.
Yeah, I will say I do think you can make big strides in a short amount of time, given the circumstances that Boise State is currently experiencing and some of the hardships that they've gone through this fall. Like, if your players have the attitude of things are going bad, we're going all in, versus things are going bad, why work harder? Like, if that all-in mentality is there, then you can make those big strides. And Riley Wimpy today said that is there with this team. Like, despite being 3-4, you go into the locker room and everybody is still working as hard as ever, if not harder. So that seems to be a sign of encouragement. But they're going on the road to Colorado State. And on one hand, you're thinking, hey, maybe this is the perfect opponent for Boise State. The Broncos have never lost to the Rams. Usually they play really well against Colorado State. So maybe this is exactly what the doctor ordered. Or maybe you feel pressure from that too, because you know that you've already checked the number of boxes kind of towards those negative stats of consecutive losses at home on the blue. First time they've lost 4 games this early in a season in 2 decades. They've never lost to Colorado State. Is that another box we're going to have to check in terms of keeping that unbeaten streak? Or does that something else that goes by the wayside and the pressure get to them? Where would you lean with this? Like, what the doctor ordered, or come kickoff, there's going to be pressure on Saturday?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think there's definitely going to be, sir. But I think, yeah, they'll be hearing some of those stats and things you just threw out this week. And I think we're going to be able to pull it out this week. I think we're going to, but I just don't want the fan base to see it as, okay, they came out and, put a few things into play and came out and they played great and then like all things are fixed. Obviously, it's not that simple. It's going to take time. So, let's say we go out and we hand it to Colorado State pretty good. Just don't expect that obviously to be, this team standard, going forward, because we still have some really tough games coming up, and we're still figuring things out. It's not going to happen overnight. Just remember here, I said it. It's not going to happen overnight. So give them.
I agree with you.
They're going to start clicking, but Pete used to doing things right makes the big things come easy. So that's what they're trying to get back to, and so I think that'll pay off.
Yeah, I think that at least we can kind of see some of the things that they've been working on, I guess. So that's obviously a positive. Colorado State, a 3-point underdog at home against Boise State in Fort Collins. Here's an area of concern for me, Shane. Boise State, we know some of the troubles they've had with their offensive line. I think it has been better. It has been getting better. They figured out kind of some rotations, and we'll see if that holds true this week as they get through the bye. Guys inevitably get more healthy with some time away, so we'll see what that unit looks like this week if they get anybody back. Garrett Curran has been out, for a couple of games now, and that was a big reason why they reshuffled the deck and slotted Jake Stetz over at left guard. If you believe that Curran is one of your best 5 offensive linemen and he's back, his position's left guard. So how do you reshuffle the deck again, maybe to get your best 5 out there? Kind of a wait and see thing. But the Colorado State defensive line is no joke. And the Rams overall can really put pressure on the quarterback. They're top 10 in the country in sacks. They have 30 through 7 games. So despite some of the positive momentum we see being built, does that slow down anything that you feel about this team, or any positivity you feel about this team going into Saturday there, Shane?
Considering one of the rough spots on our offense has been our offensive line, that does not make me feel to this game, obviously. 30 sacks is a lot of sacks for the people out there who don't,
That's over 4 games.
It's a lot of sacks. So yeah, that makes me nervous, because we obviously know what happens when you can control the line of scrimmage. Did it to BYU, and a team that's ranked, higher than obviously the 30 and 40s be the top 10 team. And so coming in here, we don't want to be the team who cannot the line of scrimmage. It's been our problem all year. We've seen that story, read that book a million times now. So we got to figure it out. We got to get something going.
Yeah. I know that one thing that would help is if they get healthier at running back. They were without both George Halani and Cyrus Habibi-Lakio against Air Force. They haven't had George in a few weeks now, and he's barely been at full strength for any length amount of time all season long. And he's one of their best players. So if they get him back, that'd be amazing. And I know I said this last week too, but one of the most impressive things about 11 straight years with a 1,000-yard rusher, I always thought was the talent. But now I'm now starting to understand that it's also equally valuable as availability. And that's something they haven't really had out of their top running back really since 2019. I mean, and that's when George Halani took over midway through the season as a true freshman and rushed for 1,000 yards. We will get back to Colorado State in a prediction here in just a little bit, Shane. But we were talking about this earlier today, when just you and I were chatting. I spoke with Jeremiah Dickey a little earlier this week. And he told me that he gave me more than a number of upgrades. We'll begin with Albertson Stadium. And it's been almost 2 months since Boise State entered into a partnership with a company that was going to evaluate all of their athletic facilities. And then Boise State basically was going to take that information and decide where to go with it. It looks like early December should be the time where that evaluation is near complete. At the moment, though, Jeremiah Dickey did say that Albertson Stadium and football, it's obviously going to be a huge priority for them to get all that figured out. When you walk into Albertson Stadium right now, the press box is plain. And this is something we've been harping on for a while now, but little things like that have to change. I mean, as a former player, Shane, with the second most catches in program history, maybe I shouldn't ask about you. I mean, because you're going to probably just push it aside. But shouldn't there be something in there that suggests Kellen Moore is the winningest quarterback in NCAA history? I mean, shouldn't there be something like that?
I always thought Kellen should have, at least probably we should be working on a statue here at some point. But
Something.
yeah, I mean, it doesn't, even if it's not necessarily inside the stadium, things, just little monuments and stuff outside the stadium, probably be cool. I mean, it's stuff you see at the bigger schools. Obviously, he's coming from some big programs, so he's seen things. And so when he sees ours, you obviously can tell that those things are missing. So, and I like it. I mean, change is good. These are things that they don't do anything but recognize the people who have, came before us. So we're huge on that here, embracing the past and attacking the future. So I think it's a good move.
Again, though, it feels like that's just words, though, too, Shane. Like, we can talk about it, but like, where's the action to embrace the past? I really don't feel like there has been a ton. Like, I know, like, social media and stuff, the department has absolutely tried to generate that type of interest at times. But like, in terms of embracing the past, it's got to be more than going down to the print shop and printing and reprinting banners every year that just update the bowl game you went to and hanging them in the corners. Like, and Jeremiah Dickey more or less told me that too. Like, that's not a Power 5 standard. And right now, even if they're not a Power 5 program, technically, they're going to operate with Power 5 expectations. And I mean, that should get Bronco Nation as energized as anything we say on this podcast, probably. But it has to be something new every year where fans are looking around and noticing and seeing change and getting excited for it. Jeremiah Dickey has a grand plan for this thing, and he gave us a few little just notes that whenever this vision does come together, I think Bronco Nation is going to be extremely excited, mostly because it's nothing that we haven't seen anything like this since I've been here. The Stuccle went up before I was here. Maybe that energized fans. I've been here over a decade now, and there really hasn't been a significant improvement other than the Double R Ranch scoreboard to Albertson Stadium. You could count the football facility, but again, the football facility doesn't do anything to impact like the game day and experience for the fan. That's just where the guys train, so it impacts them, but it doesn't impact the fans. And I think I don't know. It sounds exciting. It sounds cool. It also sounds like Boise State absolutely has to operate with a sense of urgency and capitalize on all the success that they've had and show it off. I think it's crazy. So what is the first, if you were in charge, Shane, what's the first thing that you would do to honor the past of the Boise State football program? What's the first thing you would do?
That's a good question. Okay, where's the location of this upgrade going to be placed? Are we talking outside stadium, inside football facility?
That's also a great question. Now, on January 2nd, 2020, so this was before the pandemic ran wild on our country and everybody's budget, bottom line, Boise State released some renderings about an East Side Stadium renovation. They even had a website for it. That website is now down. We don't have that website anymore, apparently, or they're not utilizing it. But the focus was the East Side renovation. And moving forward, it doesn't necessarily mean that the East Side won't see a significant upgrade, because it will. But things that Jeremiah Dickey is at least considering is, what if they bowl in, one of the end zones, right? You add seating. On top of that, though, you get a chance to basically really polish up what you're presenting, and maybe having one grand entrance where you funnel everybody through, and that's where you really feel the energy and experience of being inside Albertson Stadium. And then maybe some of it might not be right to say secondary, but then though that will, eventually kind of upgrade and impact what needs to happen on the east side of the stadium there. So I guess the visual that I kind of get out of that, and I could be wrong, because technically they could bowl in either side. The way the Gene Blademeyer football complex was constructed was with the opportunity to bowl in that side. But let's just say that you bowl in the side opposite of that by the varsity center. You get a chance to basically reconstruct all that. Now, all of a sudden, when you're driving down Broadway or University, you see this grand entrance to Albertson Stadium, easy access. How about a Kellen Moore statue right as you walk in?
I like it.
Right?
I definitely like
I think that'd be exciting.
I originally thought when they were building the new Blamemeyer facility that we were going to bowl in the other side, but obviously that's not how things went. But I thought it made sense, but obviously it's about the money. It is not that simple. But yeah, bowling in the sides is huge. I mean, obviously that would seem a bit louder in that place. You have fans closer to the field, as if it wasn't already loud. But I like that. Those are things that obviously past guys have not been thinking about, or at least trying to interplay.
I think the overall goal of accomplishing this stuff, it just got stagnant, and for so long, I think that. If I'm being honest, I feel like some of the leadership got more concerned about what they didn't have than going out and trying to get what they could have. And Jeremiah Dickey said something to me that it, again, resonated, and I thought that it was awesome. He said that we're gonna be unrealistic, something to the effect of we're gonna be unrealistic because he believes that it will produce epic results. Like there's no bad options, there's no bad idea. Not only does that apply when it comes to, trying to find a new way to do all their facilities, but also generating revenue. I mean, Shane, he brought up like maybe one day there's going to be a Bronco Bitcoin or a Boise State Boise State cryptocurrency, not Bitcoin, Boise State cryptocurrency, same diff maybe, I don't know. But then all of a sudden, like maybe that's how you buy stuff at Boise State games. I mean, like, I don't know how realistic that idea is, but just the fact that they are even like considering something like that, it shows you behind the scenes how creative they are trying to get with this right now. I mean, a Boise State cryptocurrency, like, wow.
Sounds like Bronco Bucks to me.
You might want to trademark that there, Shane.
I do. Yeah, I do want my cut. Just letting Jeremiah know right now.
Yeah, I think it's a lot. I think it's exciting. As long as we're on this subject, one other thing that I'm going to add too is that, when I was down at Central Florida for the season opener, there was a point where you could kind of stand out behind the stadium. And I did a visual tour that we posted online. You could find it easily at KTVB.com if you do type in UCF Stadium Tour. But you stood at this point and you saw the baseball field behind you, the softball field over your shoulder. You looked off and right over, just in the near distance was the track. Where they ran track as well as a soccer field. And just behind that was the basketball facility. And then standing right in front of you was the football facility. That athletes village, there's hardly anybody even there when I was there, Shane, but just standing in the middle of it all, it almost felt like there was some energy there. Like one program can feed off the other, all that stuff. Right now, I don't know if you really feel that at Boise State. Like the Steve Appleton Tennis Center is phenomenal. But then you have basketball, and then volleyball's over in Bronco Gym, and then you have, you have Albertson Stadium, and then way kind of off campus, you have the soccer fields, and then the tennis indoor. You don't really get that visual, like that ability to feel that energy. And so one thing that Jeremiah Dickey says that at least is on the table is maybe an athletes village. What exactly that looks like, where it exactly takes place, that is yet to be, analyzed, discussed, and determined potentially. It also take a lot of money. And you're looking at, like, when you consider all these facilities, you're looking at like a 5-10 year project. Like there's more low-hanging fruit, as Jeremiah called it, that can be addressed in the immediate future. But for these bigger ideas, it's going to take a while to pull all this off. But again, it goes back to what he said, like being unrealistic is going to produce epic results. And so I think that, I don't know. I'm trying to envision how it's going to happen. I have no freaking clue. But the fact that he apparently does have that vision is pretty cool. I think that should energize Bronco Nation quite a bit.
For sure. I mean, if it means anything to you, I went and visited Bo Martin and Eli Drinkwitz over at University of Missouri. And while walking through, and touring the facilities and stuff, that's exactly what they're doing right now. Nice indoor. Have on top of all this, yeah, that SEC money is very, very different. I believe when I was in Missouri's weight room, I felt like they had more dumbbells than Axiom has. Like, it's ridiculous, like out of this world. But they were actually redoing a new indoor, even though they had one, but the one they had they would have to walk a little bit across campus just to get to it. Redoing it right next to the stadium to where they would never have to leave, and everything was in one spot. And so, yeah, that's kind of seems like what Jeremiah is doing, and it seems like that's what Dave is just putting everything in one spot. And I think that's huge. He's thinking big. I mean, the fact that he is piggybacking some of the same ideas that ADs and stuff are doing over in the SEC, we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah. I hope that we see it one day. I hope that they have the vision. They're going to have to create the funding, but he is certainly not intimidated. And I think you wrap this up by telling me, like, what it all ends up looking like. He can't necessarily exactly predict, but he basically ended it by saying that, he would promise that they'll exhaust every resource and that they are going to work to try to achieve greatness. And again, operating with Power 5 expectations. And truly wrap your head around that. If you go to these Power 5 schools and you see some of the facilities that they have, they are definitely a level up. And if Boise State still holds the hopes of ever competing at at the Power 5 level in the Big 12, Pac-12, whatever the heck it might be, I don't know, maybe a new conference by then, who knows? Then they're going to have to be on par in a number of areas other than just the football team's record. So we'll see. The momentum begins to build. One other thing we talked about, Shane, that I thought was kind of interesting is the future of the BYU rivalry. And now with BYU going to the Big 12, Jeremiah Dickey, he said that he really praised the relationship that he has developed with BYU's athletic director, and they have a great connection there. But the reality of it is that BYU is going into the Big 12, and they're going to have to really consider what they're doing in their non-conference schedule right now. And it's unrealistic to load that thing up with their three rivals each and every year, plus maybe one more. But playing Boise State, Utah State, and then finding another game on top of their Big 12 schedule, I mean, they're signing up for something that no program outside of Alabama should. That's tough. So moving forward, it sounds like, Utah State, Utah, and BYU, there's probably going to be some rotational thing with Boise State where BYU and Boise State no longer play every year. Maybe it's every other year. Maybe it's every 3 years. How do you feel about that? Because I really do think that BYU Boise State rivalry has turned into something special over the last decade.
Yeah, I mean, it does suck, obviously, to kind of lose that. And if I'm BYU, I kind of see it as an opportunity to I would probably lock in Utah. That's just one that they have to have every year. It's Utah. It's no different than an Oregon. Yeah, it's no different than an Oregon State type deal, Washington, an Apple Cup or something like that. But I think they have to lock in Utah. And then I think they should just rotate Utah State and Boise State every year. So you have Utah State this year, Boise State next year, and then vice versa. You just rotate every year. And then that still gives them a game or two to kind of, either get a lesser team, or if you want to kind of venture out, find you a Big Ten school, SEC school, you can do that. But I think I would still try to keep those rivalry games locked in and just basically limit how many other non-conference games you can play or who you're going to play. Because, yeah, it's going to be tough not having the Utah States and the Boise States on the schedule, or Utah's. But we got to see, because I feel like the Big 12 has some control over that too. So we'll see how that goes. I'm hoping they're able to keep all three alive because they're all three good rivalries.
Yeah. I agree. We'll see. It would be It'd be unfortunate to Provo once every 6 years. Like if you had the 3-year rotation where every 3 years you played them and you traded that home site. Once every 6 years, Boise State goes to Provo. And actually, more importantly, once every 6 years, BYU would come here to Boise. I mean, that is a game that you can pretty much count on, if not selling out, being right near capacity. And it almost doesn't matter how good the Cougars are. That's just a game that usually has a lot of interest. So hopefully they figure that out. And who knows, maybe even one day that will be a conference game. I don't know. And then they'll be forced to play each other every year. We'll see.
I like how you
but it would be, yeah, right. Hey, shoot for the moon, man. Be unrealistic, and hopefully you produce epic results. I'll just steal the line from Jeremiah Dickey. All right, but enough talk about the future. We get back to the present. And again, Boise State traveling to Fort Collins to take on Colorado State this week. The Rams have one of the best tight ends in the country in Trey McBride. The guy's phenomenal. He has over 50 catches on the season. The second guy on the roster only has like 15 or something. So he is their go-to guy, one of the most talented tight ends in the country. They're physical. They can run the football. But again, Boise State has held the upper hand in this series ever since it's ever existed. So how do the Broncos go to Fort Collins and get this done in a game where, again, they're only favored by 3 points, Shane?
It's a good question. I think, obviously, we know that the battle of the trenches is going to be a problem for us. So we're going to have to do what, I think we do best on offense. We're going to have to throw it. We're going to do some bootlegs to get them moving. Don't just have them so stagnant and having our offensive linemen having their feet just stuck in the ground. We need to get guys moving. That's kind of – and then we need to also – we got to take shots. We got to take some shots. Like, it's got to happen. Obviously, it's a little bit harder to take shots when you can't get protection, but we got to hold up for a little bit, kind of get them to back off a bit. Obviously, if we could run the ball, that would be a lot easier for us to throw it. But if we're not able to run it, we got to make it happen through the pass game. And I don't want it to be a game where we aren't able to run the ball in the entire first half, so we come out in the third quarter and try to still run the ball. We gotta be able to adjust on the fly. Got to get it going. We cannot just get stuck on something. We got to adjust. Yeah. We have to adjust.
I can't wait to see if this team can sustain some consistency for an entire game, because this whole the roller coasters of emotion where they look great and then they look terrible. It's been too much to overcome this year. I mean, it's as simple as that. So can they sustain what they're capable of achieving for a full football game in conference play when you need a win? You need a win not just for this season and to stay in the hunt of winning your division and maybe competing for a Mountain West championship. The program needs it, because the only thing that looks worse on paper than 3-4 is 3-5. And now all of a sudden you start doing math in your head of, oh man, how do we finish the season above 500 when you consider that road trips to Fresno State and San Diego State, a top 25 team, still loom? And so if this goes south, it only adds more and more pressure to this team, for the final 4 games to get above 500, keep the 500 streak alive, and find a way into a bowl game. For me, it goes back, got to eliminate negative plays. And I joked last week, I don't care if you come out in the wishbone against Colorado State, eliminate the negative plays at all costs, because that is something that, again, Boise State has just not been able to overcome in their losses. They haven't. Boise State is somewhere around 850 rushing yards this season, right? They've lost almost a quarter of those yards due to whatever it would be, bad snaps, fumbles, just negative run plays. They've lost almost a quarter of those yards. It's crazy to me. In their losses, Shane, they've almost lost as many yards as they've gained on the ground, meaning I guess you could say 50% of the yards, because they're averaging right around 45.5 yards rushing per game in their losses. In those same games, they're averaging 49.5 yards in negative run results. So they've got to figure it out. And if they can do that, I think this team can move forward. But they got to cut out the negative in order to be able to celebrate and benefit from the positive. If they can't do that, it's going to be a long day in Fort Collins, in my opinion, especially when you consider the Rams pass rush. So got to cut out the negative. I know it's not going to be perfect, but you can't have any of these negative 20-yard plays all of a sudden, -7, -8, whatever it is, that are just murdering drives. Like, you got to get that out of the offense right now.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and roll in with my prediction.
What we got? Go.
I'm going to go 31-27, Boise State.
Okay, so another close one. I like your prediction, Shane, and I'm terrible at this, and you've been really good at it all year, so I'm just going to go with that. I'm not even going to try to get creative. We'll just go with that, and Boise State's able to pull it out. I think if they do, Bronco Nation should celebrate it, because Colorado State is a team, despite what happened at the end of last week's game, that's starting to figure it out a little bit, I feel like. And they're going to be focused. They're going to be dialed, because last week's game ended in chaos for them with a really weird field goal attempt when they could have spiked the ball, stopped the clock, attempted a game-winning field goal where just chaos wasn't going on, trying to run their team on at the last second. So I think they're going to be really focused under Steve Adazio. And if Boise State can go get this done, that'll be a big accomplishment. Really quick, Shane, one thing that blew my mind about Colorado State, they don't have a full-time paid special teams coach. Like, they have a special teams quality control guy or something like that, but they don't have what Boise State has. And Stacey Collins is an edge coach and a special teams coach. Is that not weird?
That is definitely weird.
Yeah, I don't get, especially when last year Boise State and Avery Williams killed Colorado State on special teams, and then a special teams blunder cost them last week's game against Utah State. Now the Aggies, of all teams, the team that Boise State went on the road and blew out, the Aggies are right now in control of the Mountain Division. Blows my mind that's the case. Blows my mind. But with the Mountain West scheduling, Utah State's in-conference schedule, I mean, really a cakewalk compared to Boise State's. It's not even comparable. So we'll see. But 31-27, we'll put it on the board, Shane, and we'll hold you accountable, my man, okay?
All right. I like it.
Real quick, what's Sloan, your daughter, going for as Halloween? My little girl is probably in the last 2 months loves Minnie Mouse. She wakes up in the morning, and from the moment she gets out of her crib, she just starts yelling mouse at us until we put Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, or there's another show that she really likes involving Minnie on the TV. So she's going as Minnie. What's Sloan going as? Do we know yet?
So Sloan is going to be Princess Elsa. There we go.
Okay.
I think Andrea is going as Anna. So, of course, that meant Shane is definitely going as Olaf, the snowman.
We threw this idea around too, Shane, but and I probably would have wound up as Olaf too, but she fell in love with Minnie over the last couple of weeks, so she's pretty stoked about her Minnie costume. So we're just gonna roll with that, I guess. But with that in mind, I hope everybody out there in Bronco Nation enjoys the game this weekend. Have a fun, safe Halloween. What we got there, Shane?
Excuse the dog barking in the background, but I know you can see my screen right now.
Yeah.
So that is actually, you see all those boxes right there?
Yeah.
That is my Olaf costume that just got delivered. So, I'm pretty
nice
about that. I'm pretty sure that is Olaf. You see, that's a lot of boxes too.
That is
so we're going to see how
boxes.
this works. Yeah. If it's my costume, then I'm going to just say I went all out for the costume this year for Sloan. So disregard the dog in the background, guys. He was just trying to tell me my Olaf costume was here.
That's okay. That's all right. Good. That's actually good that he did that. It looks like you're ordering the entire cast from Frozen, by the way, with all those boxes, but hey, it is what it is. So good stuff though, Shane, man. As always, I really appreciate it, bud.
Alrighty. I'll see you next week.
All right. Sounds good. Enjoy the game, everybody. Happy Halloween, and we will see you next week right here on Jay's Sports Bar, serving the Idaho sports community.